The girl simply lost her phone by accident, but the next day, she turned up dead in a gruesome scene. 5 fingers chopped off, 3 missing, and the whole scene was just horrific. In today's highly connected world of information, do you know what could happen if you lose your phone? Your phone holds all sorts of sensitive data like bank transactions, location info, and even your fingerprint for unlocking. Criminals could exploit all of that. The girl accidentally dropped her phone while riding the bus, but as she left, a stranger stepped forward and picked up the phone from the ground. Instead of contacting the girl to return it, he tried to unlock the screen by guessing the password. When it showed, "Wrong password, please try again," the man remained calm. He calmly raised the phone and smashed it against the table corner. Then, using the phone's intelligence, he called the girl's parents, pretending to be a good Samaritan who found the phone and took it to a repair shop. Following the address left by the man, the girl arrived at the phone shop. What she didn't know was that the woman on the phone was actually the man using a voice-changing software. When Nami approached the counter and found her phone, the man handed her a repair receipt. Since he couldn't be sure if she was the rightful owner, she had to fill in the boot-up password and personal information. Without much thought, Nami filled in all the information. The man observed the whole process closely. With the boot-up password, he skillfully pried open the phone, implanted a surveillance camera inside, and then cloned the data to another phone using a computer. As long as Nami used the phone with surveillance, he could monitor her every move. Seeing her broken phone almost as good as new, Nami kept thanking the man profusely. However, not long after she left, the other phone monitoring her lit up. Through the hidden camera, the man became familiar with Nami's every move. Learning that she worked at a cafe, he pretended to be a customer and deliberately bumped into Nami. The two strangers struck up a conversation. The man introduced himself as Junyong, claiming to be a regular at the cafe. He couldn't believe there was such a beautiful lady working there. He must have been blind. With Junyong's flattering words, Nami began to relax her guard. Their conversation was just witnessed by Nami's father, who happened to be nearby. He told Nami to stay away from the man she just met. He believed there was no such thing as a free lunch. The man's kindness likely had ulterior motives. However, Nami thought her father was being too overbearing, not wanting her to interact with other men, so she didn't take his warning seriously. Little did she know that their conversation was being closely monitored by Junyong through the surveillance camera. When Nami and her father argued and left, a dark figure emerged from the corner. Since Nami's father had already become suspicious of him, Junyong knew he had to strike first. Back in her dorm, Nami was getting ready to turn off the lights and go to sleep. Suddenly, a shadow passed by the window, followed by urgent knocking on the door. Nami, summoning her courage, asked who it was, but the figure outside didn't reply and continued pressing the keypad lock on the door. As the iron door opened, Nami pulled out a knife, ready to confront the intruder. However, it wasn't Junyong who walked in, but a woman. Nami finally breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out the person who opened the door was her friend, Eunju. Eunju claimed she had received a text invitation from Nami, which was why she came over. Nami had a puzzled expression, insisting she hadn't sent any text messages. She thought Eunju must have been too embarrassed to admit she was making excuses. However, as the two lay chatting together, Junyong was manipulating Nami's phone, sending messages to her contacts. At the same time, Nami's father, who had just been ready to sleep, received a message from his daughter Nami, apologizing for their argument tonight. In order to gain her father's forgiveness, Nami bought a gift for him, needing only to fill in the address on the website. The father clicked on it, noticing a system warning about virus risk, urging caution. But at the thought of his daughter buying him a gift, he didn't dwell on it. Soon after, he received a call from a delivery person, saying there was a package at the door. Surprised by the speed, he bent down to inspect the package when suddenly, Junyong emerged from the side with a wrench in hand. Caught off guard, the father was knocked unconscious. The next day, Eunju woke up, still a bit drunk, to find Nami missing from their dorm room and her phone nowhere to be seen. Did someone sneak in during the night and take Nami away? Panic started to set in as Eunju contemplated dialing the emergency hotline. Then, a left foot on the balcony caught her eye, sparking a sense of foreboding. Carefully, she approached the table, pulling back the tablecloth, and to her surprise, there was Nami underneath. Feeling warmth on her thigh, Eunju called out Nami's name a few times, relieved when Nami stirred, having just slept deeply. Thankfully, Nami was unharmed, and Eunju's anxiety subsided. As Nami checked her phone upon waking up, she was shocked to find 78 missed calls, all from her boss. She had set an alarm for 6 a.m. last night, so why hadn't it gone off? Without time to freshen up, Nami hailed a taxi and headed straight to the office. On the way, she glanced at her phone again, only to discover it wasn't just missed calls. It was flooded with texts and private messages as well. It turned out that last night, Junyoung had used Nami's phone to expose the boss's scandal of using subpar milk at the company. Now, the entire staff was out for Nami's blood. Nami tried to explain to everyone that her phone must have been attacked by a virus, and those messages weren't sent by her. But no one in the company believed her. Even her boss, who had previously valued her highly, turned against her, grabbing Nami by the throat. With despair written all over her face, Nami was forced out of the company. And this was exactly the outcome Junyoung wanted. His purpose in doing all this was to isolate Nami from everyone around her, so he could strike. Now, Eunju was the only one left on his list. At the same time, upon learning the reason behind the incident, Eunju accompanied Nami to the police station to report the case. They suspected that someone might have deliberately framed Nami by implanting a virus in her phone. However, the police replied that they could only file a case if there was evidence of the virus. Without such evidence, they strongly suspected that it was all staged by the two of them. Disheartened by the police's response, Nami left the station. On their way back, she confided in Eunju, questioning why the hacker didn't steal money from her bank accounts if her phone was really infected with a virus. Instead, they chose to spread those defamatory messages. Could it be that someone was deliberately playing tricks on her, and the mastermind behind it might be someone close to them? At that moment, Eunju remembered a computer engineer friend she had met before, thinking he might be able to help solve Nami's problem. However, what they never expected was that when they arrived at the coffee shop for the appointment, they would encounter Junyoung, whom they had briefly met before. Junyoung explained to Eunju that her friend and he were colleagues, but her friend had something come up suddenly, so he was invited to help them instead. After exchanging a few words, Junyoung mentioned that there was indeed virus-infected software installed on Nami's phone, but it could only monitor and track her movements, not control her phone to post messages. Then, he found an excuse to intentionally distract Eunju and whispered a few words into Nami's ear. Junyoung asked Nami if she had stayed with anyone else last night, suspecting that someone close to her had tampered with her phone while she was asleep. As soon as he said that, Nami immediately thought of Eunju from last night. She vaguely remembered that Eunju had given her a lot of drinks on the rooftop, and shortly afterward, she lost consciousness and passed out. When she woke up the next day, all these events had unfolded, leading her to suspect Eunju's involvement. At that moment, Nami unintentionally caught Eunju secretly filming her. Any lingering doubts vanished as Nami became 100% certain that Eunju was behind all of this. Nami confronted Eunju in the cafe, demanding to know why she would betray her like this. Nami had always considered Eunju her closest friend, never expecting her to be capable of such deception. Sitting across from her, Eunju looked bewildered, insisting she had done nothing wrong yet found herself under suspicion. Nami chose to believe a stranger over her own friend, Eunju. Disheartened, she left the cafe. Now, with all her close acquaintances removed one by Junyoung, he finally had the opportunity to strike. At the same time, the police discovered 5 extremely gruesome female corpses on a nearby hilltop. Their fingers had been severed by the perpetrator, and the scene was too horrifying to describe. Even the seasoned veteran detectives couldn't help but shudder at the sight. Through identity checks, the police found that these 5 victims shared a common thread. They had all previously reported to the police station, claiming their phones had been attacked by unknown hackers. Perhaps these cases were all the work of the same person. Officer G-Man immediately launched an investigation into nearby phone repair shops. Fortunately, their efforts paid off as they eventually located the shop through surveillance footage, but by then, it was already abandoned. G-Man quickly realized that the first 5 names on the customer list matched the deceased, and the last name was Nami. It seemed highly likely that Nami was the next target of the perpetrator. Just then, 2 police officers burst into the room. Seeing people inside, one of the officers immediately drew their weapon, but G-Man's partner quickly displayed their police badge, averting a potential misunderstanding. Following them was a woman, none other than Nami herself, whose name was on the list. It turned out that Nami, who had just had a heated argument with Eunju, had angrily dropped her phone on the ground. At the moment the screen shattered, she suddenly remembered that strange incidents had been happening frequently since she lost her phone. Perhaps it had nothing to do with Eunju. Nami called the police and arrived at the scene. After learning the situation, Officer G-Man asked Nami if she knew someone named Junyoung. At that moment, Nami realized the gravity of the situation. The man she met at the cafe last night was also named Junyoung. Could it be that they were the same person? Fortunately, Nami's phone was turned off at that time, so it wasn't compromised. So, G-Man proposed a bold plan. He wanted to use Nami as bait to lure out the mastermind behind the scenes. Although it was risky, with proper precautions, they could ensure Nami's safety. After G-Man reassured her multiple times, Nami agreed to cooperate. After all, it was also about her own safety. So, she opened her phone and sent a text to Junyoung, thanking him for his help during the day. She suggested they grab a meal together at the fast food joint downstairs. Junyoung, thinking Nami had finally taken the bait, dressed up and headed to the designated location. As he was sending the text to Nami, G-Man, hiding in the corner, stepped out of his car cautiously. He approached Junyoung's direction carefully. However, the vigilant Junyoung noticed G-Man's presence through the reflection on his phone. He quickly made his exit. Hearing someone calling his name, Junyoung halted his steps. It seemed like the other party came prepared. With the only exit blocked in front of him and someone behind him pointing a gun, he had no choice but to reluctantly turn to face G-Man. After getting a clear look at Junyoung's entire face, G-Man froze in place. This didn't match the information provided by the police department at all. It turned out that Junyoung intentionally took off his glasses and changed his hairstyle, which was why he dared to look G-Man directly in the eye. Junyoung put on an innocent victim act, scolding G-Man before taking out his phone, intending to expose them. To prevent the situation from escalating, G-Man had no choice but to let Junyoung go. However, as he turned to leave, G-Man's partner couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Most people would be at least a little afraid when someone pointed a gun at them, but Junyoung appeared remarkably calm. With insufficient evidence to prove that Junyoung was the murderer, G-Man had no choice but to find Nami and advise her to be more careful. If she encountered any danger, she should immediately call him. To prevent her phone from being monitored, Nami used a marker to write 2 lines on a business card. She would contact G-Man on time, regardless of whether she encountered danger or not. If he received a text message, it would mean she was in trouble. Back home, Nami knocked on her father's door but received no response. So she went ahead and opened it, only to find her father peacefully asleep in bed. Without much thought, Nami closed the door behind her. Back in her room, Nami retrieved her spare phone from the drawer and swapped the SIM cards, hoping to evade Junyoung's surveillance. However, as she was sending a text message to apologize to Eunju, she unexpectedly received a message from Junyoung on the spare phone. It seemed that even her backup phone had been installed with monitoring software by him. Then Junyoung questioned Nami about why she switched phones behind his back. Before Nami could respond, another message popped up on the phone with Junyoung's phone number. He instructed Nami to try calling it, and to her horror, she heard the ringing coming from her father's room next door. Realizing the danger, Nami hurriedly rushed out. Entering her father's room, Nami lifted the covers off the bed only to find several pillows underneath. It was clear that her father had been taken away by Junyoung. Quickly, Nami went to the door, locked it from inside, and retrieved the business card G-Man had given her, intending to call the police. But to her horror, the next moment, the numbers on the card vanished from her phone. Nami was left stunned, and she threw the phone away before rushing outside. In the living room, she noticed movement behind the sofa. When she turned around, a figure emerged from behind it. Junyoung had been hiding in the house, waiting for Nami. Nami rushed forward, wanting to attack the deranged man, but Junyoung pulled out his phone and played a video. In the video, the man was Nami's father. Junyoung used this to threaten Nami into submission. If she dared to resist, her father would meet a tragic end. With no other choice, Nami reluctantly dropped her weapon. Then, Junyoung instructed her to send a text message to G-Man using her phone to let him know she was safe, because he knew that calling was their secret signal. If the call went through, it meant Nami was in danger. Seizing the moment while Junyoung was distracted by his phone, Nami deliberately flicked her hand and dropped the business card on the ground. Then she questioned Junyoung about why he wanted to frame her. They had no grudge against each other. To Nami's astonishment, Junyoung's reason was simply that he found her phone. That's all. In today's highly connected world, a phone has become an indispensable part of everyone's life. Such a valuable item shouldn't be carelessly lost. Nami wished she could take a knife and deal with this psycho right now, but Junyoung across from her gave her 2 choices. Either she could kill him now with the knife, or she could leave and abandon the rescue mission for her father. Seeing that Nami didn't respond, Junyoung turned and went to the bathroom. Nami seized this opportunity to pick up the harpoon and hide near the door, ready to strike as soon as Junyoung came out. However, After waiting for a while without seeing any sign of him, she gathered her courage and went inside. To her shock, she found her father bound and gagged in the bathtub. Nami wanted to rush forward to rescue him, but Junyong's dagger was pressed against her father's chest, ready to strike at any moment. Junyong tossed a roll of duct tape, instructing Nami to bind her legs. If she complied, he might consider letting them go unharmed. After binding her legs, Junyong ordered Nami to kneel down and tie her hands behind her back. Nami wanted Junyong to release her father first, but it was clear that negotiation wasn't an option at this moment. Junyong turned on the faucet, letting the water pour relentlessly onto her father's head, the water level rising dangerously close to his neck. With no other choice, Nami obediently knelt down on the ground. Junyong shut off the faucet and proceeded to bind Nami tightly with duct tape. As per the agreement, Junyong was supposed to release Nami's father, but how could a psychopath be expected to honor a promise? He turned on the faucet, tossing both father and daughter into the bathtub, and then he even took a photo of Nami with his phone. Shockingly, Junyong set the near-death photo of Nami as his desktop background. Just as he prepared to leave after accomplishing his dark deeds, he accidentally stumbled upon a forgotten business card on the floor. Opening it, he was shocked to find the secret code used by G-Man and Nami. Receiving a text message meant they were in peril. Realizing the dire situation, Junyong glanced out the window, only to find G-Man and his partner already at the villa. Caught in a trap, Junyong decided to resist before meeting his end, but G-Man promptly aimed a gun at his head. His partner, upon recognizing Junyong's face, realized he was the same person they had encountered earlier as a passerby. G-Man landed a punch, knocking Junyong to the ground. Later, the officers arrived in the bathroom and rescued Nami and her father from the bathtub. Unfortunately, her father had been underwater for too long and had stopped breathing. G-Man, consumed with the desire for revenge, wished he could shoot Junyong on the spot, but as a police officer, he couldn't take such action. Seeing Junyong's smug demeanor only fueled Nami's thirst for vengeance. Seizing the opportunity while the officers attended to her father, she grabbed a spare gun from the floor and emerged from the bathroom. With a few shots fired, Nami finally took down the deranged assailant herself. G-Man took the gun from her, assuring her that he would handle the rest. Fortunately, with the officers' rescue efforts, Nami's father eventually regained consciousness, and both father and daughter were rushed into an ambulance.